Welcome to Voices Against Violence, a Harmony House podcast to educate, empower, and serve as a voice for survivors. We aim to shed light on crucial issues surrounding domestic violence, offer support, and inspire action for change. Join us as we work together to create a community where all individuals can live a life free of abuse. I'm Charity Jordan Rex, Prevention Program Manager for Harmony House.
And I'm Kirstyn Walker, Assistant Executive Director at Harmony House.
Joining us today is Kelsey Daniel, our second shift advocate supervisor. And she's been wanting to be on the podcast for a long time. We've been talking about it. So I'm glad that you're finally here, Kelsey. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, thank you for having me.
So you're a second shift advocate supervisor. How long have you been with Harmony House?
I have been with Harmony House since June of 2023, so a little over 2 years now.
It feels longer.
It does.
I cannot keep track of time. And so you just moved into the role as of advocate supervisor.
I did. Right around the time of my 2 years, actually, I moved into that role. So.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So advocates, we often say advocates are the heartbeat, the advocate office. It's the heartbeat of Harmony House. Give our listeners an idea of the work that happens in the advocate office, what your role looks like.
So the advocate office is quite literally in the center of Harmony House. We are a client's often their direct point of care, down from when we answer the hotline. We are assessing them about their situation to see if they would qualify for Harmony House. When they get here, we're the first person often that they see. We bring them on in, get their paperwork done, get them settled into shelter. And from there, we're really cross-trained in a lot of things. So we go from providing them with hygiene products. We're trained in crisis intervention. Obviously, this is a really emotional time for them. So not only do we provide materialistic things for them and just guide them through how shelter works, but we point them towards other external resources for like housing, childcare, things like that. But they can also use this as a resource to come in and talk to us when they are really struggling in their journey. So we're quite literally their helping hand in every perspective of their journey through getting out of their relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Really, it's more of a question of what doesn't the
honestly
do. There's so much.
And if we don't have the answers for something, we find it for them. So again, we can really stretch thin on what we do for the clients.
And you're such a well-oiled machine down there, answering calls and just meeting clients about what they might need. I mean, it really is. It's so much going on, so many plates spinning at once.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. We put a lot of pride in making sure that we're as organized as possible and things flow smoothly. Our teams mean everything to us because the better we function as our teams, first, second, and third shift, the more quality work we can put out for those clients and the amount of things that we have to do. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Really the heartbeat of the organization.
Yeah. So in your work, your direct service, you're working directly with residents in shelter. You had mentioned to me that one of the things you see is folks talking about kind of what they experienced, some of the trauma they experienced as kids.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit more about that? Like how, when we talk about trauma, everyone has experienced trauma of some kind, but really your work with clients, you are seeing that connection between the trauma you experienced in childhood and domestic violence.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Yeah. So when we assess a client, oftentimes though we're aiming towards the recent events that happen, we find that they often bring up what they went through in childhood. And I think it's a misconception that people will assume adults are just making the irresponsible choice of getting with an unhealthy person. But the truth is that it's almost like an iceberg. What we don't see is what they went through in childhood. And I always like to bring up that children need to see healthy relationships. It's not just about what they didn't experience. Maybe their parents didn't argue in front of them, or that, they kept them away from that stress and chaos. But the fact of the matter is that there was still a void there of the things that they didn't learn. I like to kind of word it as children, they have this toolbox of life, if you will. And a parent's responsibility is to not only to the best of their ability, keep them from seeing harmful things and experiencing harmful things, to know that that isn't the normal. But part of their responsibility is to place the healthy tools in that toolbox for them. When they don't get that, when they get older and they start to understand relationships more, if a person has unhealthy habits, they don't know because they didn't have the tools and resources to see that that was not normal, and that becomes their normal. Even if they didn't see what happened in the past, that becomes their normal because there is a void there that needed to be filled, and it just didn't. And so we see them, even as teenagers getting into relationships or adults, that void is filled by other people's perceptions of what a healthy relationship is, which unfortunately can be, that control and narcissistic behavior.
Wow. And I think so many times what I hear is parents who will say the kids are too young to understand, they're too young to know what's going on. And really the brain science doesn't really back that up.
Yes, absolutely.
Kids are aware of what's going on. And so if we're witnessing violence or seeing, or like you said, the lack of the healthy skills, that's getting filed away in that brain.
Absolutely. In fact, a child's brain, it's most vital for them to be seeing those things in their developmental years between the ages of 1 and 5 years old. Kids are sponges, and they're absorbing what they see, and they're curious about what they don't see. So again, if that curiosity remains, if the wrong information gets put in front of them, they're still going to absorb that. Our brain chases what is familiar, and even if it's not safe, it is familiar to them, they will cling to that. A child, they are absolutely paying attention. And I love to bring up the point that just because maybe intellectually a child does not understand the context of arguments or violence, they don't understand that, does not mean that their brain and their body doesn't go into fight or flight response, and they're not picking up on those behaviors. So that's very important.
I love how you said that. We search for familiarity. That's exactly right. That's exactly what our brains are doing. Are scanning for familiar situations.
Yeah. It's brain plasticity is what they call it. As a child, and even we are developing our habits. Our brain works through association. So again, even if it is not a safe environment or healthy, it doesn't matter to our brain. It's looking for familiar and association. And though that can be rewired, it absolutely can. It is very hard to do, especially when you are a child experiencing those unhealthy relationships from a child to adult. It will take longer, but it is possible. So
this is such a soapbox for me. I worked with kids really for over 20 years in some capacity. And the number of times that I've heard adults say, kind of like what you said, oh, well, they're too young, or, well, they can't even talk yet, or we don't argue in front of the kids. And it's like, people underestimate so much what kids are picking up on. They may not be able to verbalize what's happening. They may not understand, but they are picking up on the energy that's in that space, that tension, that stress. And that trauma, that stress, we know that has such a lasting impact physically on the body. That cognitive period, like 0 to 6, when kids, their brains are learning the most, their motor skills, their language skills, reading, all of those things, that's a critical age for development. But a child who is experiencing a lot of stress and trauma, that's going to impair that.
Yes.
And I think so often in our society, we look at kids and we say, oh, they're just dumb, or they're just, that's a behavior issue. And it's like, no, they're experiencing trauma.
Absolutely.
And when you experience trauma, you're in survival, fight or flight mode, which means your body is focused on survival. You can't think about, well, what's 2 + 2? And I have to sit in my seat in class and be still,
right.
And we just don't talk about this enough.
Right, I agree. And it can come out in different ways. Obviously, again, as adults, we're able to process trauma a little bit better. And obviously, the way it reflects in us it is different than a child. A child may be socially awkward. They may have, violent tendencies where they're, punching, kicking, or throwing tantrums over little things. They're very clingy, and the parent I don't understand why they're doing this. But it's so important to understand that children they are affected by trauma, but it is not going to display itself in the same way it does as an adult. So.
Yeah.
And so what you're saying is that these things become generational then, because we see it over time. We see the effects of trauma lasting throughout a lifetime. And then folks are seeking out or end up in relationships that are familiar to what they experienced as kiddos.
Yes, it is generational. It is a hard thing to break, but it definitely is possible. Therapy is so important. Having a community that really supports that child is very important. Again, it's hard because from the time you're little, your brain is using association. It's creating habits and behaviors. But ultimately, you can rewire your brain and set those boundaries for yourself and decide that it's going to be different for you. It's going to end here. It doesn't matter what age, Teenagers probably don't fully understand what's going on, but they can, and it's absolutely possible. You may be a little bit older, but it is possible to say it ends here. It ends with me, and educate yourself on healthy versus non-healthy relationships.
Yeah. And I think that if there's anyone out there who's thinking, maybe it's too late for change or it's too late to end that cycle, the brain science is there from first breath to last breath. Our brain has the ability to change through those practices. Like you said, that social connectedness.
Yes.
There's hope.
There is,
is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, there absolutely is. I think people, again, just have this misconception that it's something wrong with the person. Dr. Gaber Mate, he is one of my favorite doctors to listen to, and he talks about trauma, and he says trauma isn't the event in itself that happened to you, it's what happened inside of you. And I think the misconception and the problem is that people don't think about that the traumatic event in itself is awful, but they forget to pay attention how that changed your brain chemistry and focus on that. You have to go down to the root of the problem, get way below surface level to start changing it.
And it puts you in a place to better understand some of those behaviors that we see. Absolutely. And then I think of the trauma-informed approach, the lens shift from what's wrong with you to what happened to you, right? What's below that iceberg, like you said.
And another issue that, tends to come about is not fully understanding again that like what happened to me under the surface. But unfortunately, especially when you've been in an unhealthy relationship and you've grown up in that, it's almost normalized. And you do struggle with a lot of self-doubt. So you can acknowledge that something is wrong, but maybe you have these underlying insecurities that maybe I deserve that for some reason, or maybe I'm dumb or I'm annoying. And again, not just that maybe I deserve that mentality. So that's another kind of angle that you have to come about and really work on your self-confidence and your self-worth. That's like a whole other part of it.
Changing those neural pathways to say that's not true. Yeah. I do deserve safety.
I have a friend, she's a therapist, and we had a conversation about this a while back, and she said something that has stayed with me. She's like, when kids are experiencing trauma, especially if it's in the home and maybe there's that the adults have an unhealthy or even an abusive relationship, when things go wrong with kids, they don't understand the dynamics. They don't recognize the cause. And so they tend to internalize that, like, oh, there must be something wrong with me.
Yes.
Yeah.
I must be the problem. I must be unlovable.
Yes.
And so I think if you understand that kids witnessing, in this case, toxic or abusive behaviors, they know that something is wrong, but they can't understand why it's happening. And they think, oh, it must be me. And you're growing up with that mindset that there's something wrong with me. I think it makes sense that, that kid is probably going to act out.
Yes.
They're probably going to engage in risky behaviors.
Yes.
So I feel like this is, again, I feel like I say this all the time in the podcast, but we have got to talk about this stuff more.
Yes.
Instead of just writing kids off as like, oh, they're the problem kid. Yes. No, like those are kids crying out for help.
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely.
Let's get curious and not critical.
Yeah.
Ooh.
I love that.
I didn't coin it. I can't take
and not critical.
Yes. Well, and to bounce off of that, another thing that we might not think of. So we were talking about how just because they don't maybe physically see it and hear what's going on, the parent thinks that they are, which they were in a way, absolutely protecting the child from seeing that. But I've heard before, well, I just don't understand why they're behaving this way because, yes, my marriage was having problems or my relationship was, but, I had them in every sport, everything that they ever wanted, I bought them. So while you can be so present in one area for your child, if oftentimes when you're in a stressful relationship, that takes a lot from you emotionally. So you may need to, reflect on that and say, but was I there emotionally? Because I can't stress the importance of kids also having someone there for them emotionally. And I'm talking healthy emotional, not just, well, they told me about their bad day and I told them that, I'm sorry, that really sucks. You need to be able to talk your child through how to cope with bad days, how to cope with, the problems of the world that that they may have through being young and through a teen. They need to be talked through that. Again, that's putting their tools in their toolbox that they need, and the absence of that affects the child. It's not just the bad things that were put in their toolbox. It's what wasn't put in there, and that will reflect.
I think that's such a good analogy for this. If you think of it, like we all have a toolbox. And so what are you going to put in that toolbox?
Absolutely.
You could put, the wrong things in there, tools that you can't use or maybe that are harmful, or you can put good things in that toolbox.
Yep.
And so even if you take out the bad things, but if you're not replacing that with the healthy things, with the good things,
Right.
they still have an empty toolbox.
Because problems are going to arise. You cannot protect your child from everything, unfortunately. And as adults, we still face problems that need to be fixed. You have to have tools to get through life. So it is not just about the absence of the bad things, but it's the importance of the good things in there too.
And if we're going to expect kiddos to have those tools, that means that we as the adults have to be willing to teach those tools.
Yes, absolutely.
Which means you've got to do some of your own work.
Yep.
And that can be hard. I think, my experience working with thousands of parents and families in this area over 20 plus years, I feel like parents so often, and I've heard them say this, that like, oh, they'll figure it out.
Yeah.
I am here to tell you that if you aren't intentionally equipping your young person with those healthy tools, they're not necessarily going to figure it out.
Right.
Sometimes they do.
Right.
But I feel like that's the exception. I feel like most of the time they are going to find a harmful approach to deal with whatever.
Yes.
They are going to find that person who recognizes that abuser, who recognizes that, oh, I can manipulate this person, and I've said this to parents. I'm like, pouring into your kid with love and making sure that they are healthy and well-adjusted, that's like an armor that they can wear when they go out into the world.
Absolutely.
And if they don't have that, if you don't give that to them, they are going to find someone else to give it to them.
They are.
And that person isn't going to have their best interests at heart.
No.
Because they're going to be looking for that. Young people need that.
They do.
They're going to find it from somewhere.
They do. And they're also looking for, that's the danger in that, like you were saying, is that oftentimes abusers, they prey on the vulnerable. And it often can start out with, like, you've probably heard the term love bombing. So you take a person who has been in trauma and...
Wait, Kelsey, just quickly, tell us...
We need a definition.
We've talked about it before, but tell us quickly, what is love bombing?
So love bombing is a tactic used by abusers often early on in the relationship. Sometimes it can also, it's very common after, blowout arguments for them to love bomb their partner. So it's basically they'll start mirroring your behavior. You see that in the early stages of a relationship. They're going to mirror your behavior. You're going to think, we have so much in common. I've never met someone like this before. You may hear the person, you may have hung out with them 2 times and they're like, I am in love with you. I want to marry you. You are just never met anyone like you. And you are going to think that they are your knight in shining armor. Where did this person come from? But the sad reality of it is that it's a mask that does fall off. And again, it can happen really early in relationship to get that person hooked. And that's part of the problem, is that that's what makes it hard to let go, is you're like, well, this person existed in the beginning of the relationship. That's who they were. They've got to be in there somewhere. And then again, they use it after arguments to kind of reel the survivor back in. The I'm sorries, they may show excessive admiration over you. You're so beautiful. I love you so much. pour gifts, money, whatever it is. So that would be love bombing. And you take, especially I feel like in teenagers, it's really common when they start their relationships. Sometimes I feel like more in the teens, they're looking for accountability from that parent. They're looking for, I'm sorry. They're not just looking for solutions on how to work their way through life, but one of their biggest needs is that I am sorry. I am sorry that I was not there for you emotionally. I am sorry that I put you in that position. And it's not to blame the parent at all, because we're all just doing the best that we can with what we have grown up with, because again, it's generational. But it's saying, apologizing to yourself and apologizing to that child and figuring out how to do better. So if you have a teenager or someone who is in the dating age where they never got that love, that emotional attention, that I'm sorry you went through that. That's where the abuser comes in, and they pry out what you're looking for, and they will just pour that into you because you've been starving for that. I've seen quotes that talk about when you're starving for something, you'll accept crumbs of it. And that's where the problem lies.
Say that again.
When you're starving for it, you'll accept crumbs of it. We'll accept the absolute bare minimum. We'll accept bad treatment, even if there's a little good treatment in there, and that's where you get stuck. It can be, 90% bad, but 10% good. But if you're starving for that good, for that love, that attention, you're going to cling on to that.
I feel like that makes sense, though, because if you're starving... crumbs are better than nothing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for bringing up the point too about with non-judgment meeting folks where they are, because like you said, it's generational. And so we are inheriting these systems.
Yes.
And so we're saying all of this with no judgment. We learn we learn better and do better for future generations in order to break these cycles.
Yes, absolutely. I feel like we are doing a little bit better in this generation about not accepting that bad behavior, but I think that it's, especially way back then, it's very common, honestly, to be being mistreated is accepted. And sometimes people have to just rub some dirt on it. You're fine. It's not that big of a deal, but we need to start making it a big deal again. Yeah. If you're not meeting expectations, if you're making me feel bad in any sort of way, you have to go, because it starts with that. Well, I don't think that was a big deal. I mean, that didn't make me feel the best, but you're not sensitive. You're not crazy. You're not dramatic. Make it a big deal from the very start and pay attention to those things. Because again, if you didn't grow up with those healthy boundaries, like Charity said earlier, when an abuser gets, that vulnerable side of you and realizes what you're missing and what you're needing, people take advantage of that. So make it a big deal to take care of yourself and your boundaries.
This has been such a powerful conversation. I hate that we have to end it here. We could do a whole hour just on this, Kelsey. What do you want to leave listeners with? For the parents and caregivers out there. Yeah. What do you want them to know?
Well, like I said earlier, I hope that nobody is blaming themselves and they remember that this is not only generational, but a strong generational hold. So the first thing, forgive yourself, but then just do better going in the future. Educate yourself on narcissism, trauma bonds, how trauma really affects you. Forgive yourself, and then realize that you deserve better. Your child deserves better. Take their hand and go from there and just move forward. And it can be broken. The generational curse, if you will, of the unhealthy relationships can be broken. No matter what age you're at, how long you've been in it, it is possible. And like I said earlier, start making it a big deal, not only for yourself, but for your child. Start making it a big deal.
Kelsey, I can't thank you enough. It took a while for us to get here, but man, I'm so glad we did.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yes, I'm very, very happy to be here, and I love what we're doing. I think it's so important to just educate people, again, not just about the surface level of domestic violence, but down to the root of it. So,
yeah. Thanks, Kelsey.
Absolutely.
All individuals have a right to a life free of abuse. If you or someone you know needs help, please call our 24-hour hotline, 417-864-SAFE, 417-864-7233, or chat 24/7 with an advocate on our website at myharmonyhouse.org. Visit our website or follow us on our socials to stay up on the latest news and events. This is Voices Against Violence. Thanks for listening.